This is part 3 of the Craftsman King Seeley 150 drill press rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 2, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we will be disassembling the motor. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing is removing the motor mount from the motor. And it is actually mounted to the motor frame, although the parts diagram will call that a base. And the wiring, because it was some hodgepodge setup, was also attached to that motor mount, so we're going to remove that. So depending on what model 150 you're looking at, the way that that bottom part, which is the part all the way to the right of that motor mount, may be slightly different. But we're going to disassemble this one. And I think I moved the camera or zoom in a little bit more so you can see the components here. It's not complicated, but somebody always asks questions. So that single screw holds the whole thing together. Now the nut that it's threading into is welded into the motor mount on the back side. That's not always the case depending on which motor mount you've got. Like I said, there's 3 different versions of this. Alright, and then we're going to head over to the vise to remove the roll pins that are holding in those motor mount rods. So you can kind of see there's a little bitty like half moon cutout on the lip of the motor mount. So it makes removing these roll pins real simple. And you just use a 1/4 inch punch and just punch them straight through. Same thing for both sides. Too easy. Alright, next we're going to remove the frame clamps from the motor. These are what connect the motor frame, which is the U-shaped part on the bottom, to the motor. Then we're going to remove that pulley. So it's got a set screw in there. We just need to get that set screw out. I think I'm feeling with my finger. This was the pulley that has the bend in it on the sheave. Kind of hard to tell from the video here. It's just a little shallow bend, but we'll end up cleaning that up with a brass rod and a hammer. So there goes the set screw. We'll just shoot some PB blaster in there to help us get that sucker off of there. Then use a puller. And it comes right off. Yep. This is the one that's got that little bend in it. You can kind of see it there. Alright, so next we're going to remove the stator studs, or the really long screws. And this motor is one of the cheaper designs, or definitely they employed a lot of cost-cutting measures in making this motor. It has sleeve bearings instead of ball bearings, and there's only one nut on these stator studs, and the other end is just got like a thicker piece on the stud itself. So I had to use the vice grips to grab onto it. Now we can go ahead and pull away the frame. Pretty standard frame. So next we'll remove the mounting ring. These are rubber, and then they have an outer ring which is metal. That one comes out pretty easy, but this one not as much. I did find a source for these at one time, but I don't think I've even got the link anymore. If you're needing them, then sling me a message or something and I'll try to find them again. They come in a variety of sizes, so you'll just have to know what size you need. Alright, now we'll remove the terminal cover. On the back side of the terminal cover there is a reversing direction, but it is really dirty. And then we'll start on the wiring. So I'm going to remove this wiring and mark it as I remove it, and I'm going to do kind of a little wiring diagram so I can reassemble all this later on. Since we don't have an actual owner's manual for this motor, all we've got is a parts diagram, and that doesn't tell us anything about the wiring. Luckily the wires are all color coded, so that'll help in reassembly. So I'm just marking on there what terminals they go to on that terminal bar. Alright, so now we're going to separate the end shields. This one is the terminal end and this one is the other end. So we remove the other end first, and there was a rubber washer inside the very end of that. I've seen that before. And we're going to go ahead and remove these different washers that are on the rotor shaft. I'll lay them out in the order that they go so you can figure it out when you go to reassemble. So I think I got this right. You got your washer plastic, washer rubber, the retainer, which is metal, and then the retaining ring. Now there's supposed to be a metal washer in there called a tool washer as well, but it's not in this one, and it's not on the other end either, but it's called for in the parts diagram. So I think I've disassembled this motor before. Sorry, that's the filler cap when you put oil into the sleeve bearings that we're going to remove here. So as I was saying, I've rebuilt a couple of these motors, and it's a great motor. I mean, it runs great, and you know the sleeve bearings do their job. But I don't think I've ever had one that had all of those parts that are supposed to be on the rotor shaft. I think every single one of them I've ever disassembled has been missing that, either the metal washer or, yeah, pretty much almost all of them, it's the metal washer that's missing. So maybe they just omitted it, and the parts diagram that I had access to is incorrect or outdated. Don't know. Got some wasps, and they made a little nest in here. Pretty typical for Georgia. We do have some bugs here. So that's the rotor. It is now out. So dealing with the terminal end shield, we're going to remove the terminal bar, or as it's listed in the parts diagram. Oh, look at there. There's that nut that we dropped. In the parts diagram, it's called the switch assembly, I believe. Just 2 screws. All the wiring on the back side of it is soldered in, so we're not going to be disconnecting it unless we have to. So we'll go ahead and get the filler plug for the oil port on this end out of there. I think the first time I worked on one of these motors, my concern was it was going to leak oil everywhere, which really they don't. It's pretty efficient. Alright, there's that screw there. I'm not entirely sure what the heck it's there for. I think it's a grounding screw. But it's not really identified on the parts diagram, or I don't remember it being on the parts diagram. And there was nothing going to it, so who knows. Alright, so this end is exactly the same as the other end, except in the opposite direction. We'll get that retaining clip off of there. And then separate those parts. So I've got the retaining clip in the wrong spot. It needs to be on the right, but you got your retaining ring, the washer plastic, washer rubber, and then the retainer, which is metal. And then the retaining ring would go all the way on the right. Alright, so now we're going to disassemble the actuator assembly, or as it's called on just about every other motor, the governor. You got 2 springs. There's these little aluminum rods, and they've got a cutout. You'll see as I pull it out here, there's a cutout that has to rest where my finger is sitting. And then you've got the 2 governors. Well, you got the plastic sleeve, and you got the 2 governors, and then between the governors and the mount, there is these 4 felt washer things. And that completes the disassembly of the actuator assembly. So the last thing we're going to be doing is removing the motor data panel from the end frame here. And it's held in by 2 drive screws, but the holes for the drive screws are blind, meaning you can't access them from the back side. So the way I get around this is I'm just going to use some masking tape to mask off the area to help protect it a little. Then we're going to use a cutoff wheel on a Dremel to cut a slot in the head of the drive screw. And then we'll be able to twist these out as if they were a screw with a screwdriver, a flat tip screwdriver. Now if you don't get that slot pretty much dead center on this thing, then you'll end up breaking off half the head. And getting it out at that point becomes a very hard process. I've had to drill a couple of these out because I broke the head off. I don't think there's anything critical on the back side. So you could theoretically drill through the back and then push it out, but aligning that hole that you're drilling with this little bitty drive screw would be kind of difficult in my book. I think I've actually done that once as well. And it was a pain in the butt. So it's best just to take your time, get that slot as centered on the head as you can, and then apply a lot of downward force and just twist lefty-loosey, and it'll come out of there, hopefully. So there's one. And there's number 2. Well, that wraps up this video, and the motor has been completely disassembled. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you got any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. Next video, we'll be cleaning all this stuff up. As always, I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time.